Good afternoon. My name is Travis Bowling. This is my final assignment for BSCOM 485. This is the Week 5 Organizational Communication Analysis, Part 5, Reflection and Evaluation. I'm going to speak about the value of reflecting on and evaluating a communication process after a crisis, what I could have done differently within my organizational scenario that might have helped me formulate a better and more ethical analysis or resolution, what research methods I should have used to collect data, and evaluate the effectiveness of my organizational communication analysis, what I could have done to prevent communication crisis within my virtual organization, which was Smith Systems Consulting, and what tools I could have used to continually assess the people, the tasks, and the systems. I'm also going to speak about what communication theories I considered in my analysis, and then evaluate how well I think that I applied them. The last two things I'm going to talk about is from this course, which communication theories and ethical principles, research techniques, studies, or methods I might use in my professional life. And then lastly, how did my communication analysis synthesize with what I've learned in my BSCOM program? So let me just get over to my page here. The value of reflecting on and evaluating a communication process after a crisis or a challenging event. The first thing that we want to do is actually make sure that it works, whatever it is that we end up doing. And if it does work, we want to trace back and see the exact steps that we took to correct that particular problem. And then we can use that for training purposes and one potential way to get out of that crisis. So the three crises that I chose were the major financial loss, ethical violations, or technological malfunctions. So if we did something and we were not able to correct that problem, we'd also want to do the same thing as we would if we did correct it, because there's things to learn in both ways, and we can use both situations for future training purposes. That's a great way for employees to get together and role play and kind of work out problems that may come up in the future that are similar or the exact same. One thing that I could have done better with my organizational scenario that may have been helpful to formulate a better, more ethical resolution would have been to have training programs in place already for those types of issues. Nowhere on the intranet or the internet, as far as the Smith Systems Consulting company goes, were there an option for that. So we'd want to go ahead and get that into place. That way it's already there ahead of time. And perhaps we could place it in the company handbook and make sure that each employee gets a company handbook that states that any ethical violation will result in either mandatory training by that department head and the person involved in the infraction, or the immediate termination, regardless of the personal status within the company. Some of the research methods that I should use to collect data and to evaluate the effectiveness of my organizational communication analysis would most likely be surveys. I do think that if you ask the right questions, then surveys can be beneficial. But another thing that I would definitely recommend and suggest would be to place suggestion boxes around the company. That way, those who have a difficult time either coming forward with information or raising their hand in a meeting to speak up, they have an option to give their suggestion and let their voice be heard, and it also lets them do that without any fear of any type of backlash. If they're not going to raise their hand and say it directly and get credit for it, at least they can still get that information out, and perhaps it works and is used. To prevent the future communication crises within Smith Systems Consulting, we could have multiple forms of contact methods. We're a technological-based type of company, so obviously email is our main source of contact, but we can use an electronic means of communication: paper, phone, fax, and then something that we don't always think about anymore is runners. Individual people who can run information back and forth, very similar to the old days where you release a pigeon or a crow and they fly the information over. We can have people do the same thing. That way we can still communicate in the event of a crisis. I think some great training programs for that could be to have training days where nobody knows what day it's going to be or what exactly it's going to look like, but we just kill the power to all of the Smith Systems Consulting businesses throughout the United States. And from that point, we utilize our other means of communication to stay in touch with one another and to continue to move forward with our business. Communication theories that I considered in my analysis. One was the social marketing theory, and which that one focuses on how socially valuable information can be promoted. And this theory can help promote the type of behavior that we want at Smith Systems Consulting, and it creates a framework that can be used to design different campaigns. Now, typically, this particular theory is used for a customer base, but I think that we can also use it for the employees within the company to help create the culture that we want and one that works. And I believe overall it was applied pretty well, and our focus, from the very start of this BSCOM 485 was to promote company culture, and I think that we've done a pretty good job of that over the course of the last 5 weeks. Some of the research techniques, ethical principles, and communication theories that I might emulate in my professional life. So one of the communication theories that I like the most is the coordinated management of meaning theory. And this theory is one that it lays down the process that helps us to socially communicate, and that makes us create meaning and also manage the social reality of things. And so this theory advocates on the articulation of a process and development on any given situation by people. And so I was really drawn to that one mostly, but I also like the cognitive development theory, and although it's related to children specifically, I'm very interested in it nonetheless. And the main argument of that theory is that the human mind, also known as the cognitive structures, it's an adaptation which ensures that our chances of survival are high by providing us with the right fit for the world. And so this means that human intelligence is an adaptation. Again, while that particular theory is related to children, it also means that, the level of intelligence we experience and go through as humans, it's all about adaptation, and I'm really, really drawn to that for quite a few different reasons. My communication analysis or rhetorical criticism on what I've learned from my BSCOM program, it ranges everywhere from choosing different theories to base situations on, like the ones I've just mentioned before in this presentation, but also how to properly deal with ethical issues like, ethics in advertising and puffery and things like that, or how to deal with a crisis like the ones that we have talked about over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks with Smith Systems Consulting. Combining all of those things together, it really does make it makes it easier to go into in my professional life in the event that I come into a problem with any of those situations, whether it's big or small, how to communicate properly and effectively with people to where the information that I'm receiving is taken in and processed, but also the information that I'm putting out is being received correctly, and not so much of a finger pointing, but more of a positive communication experience for everybody, and one that's going to work. So, again, comparing Smith Systems Consulting to my everyday life in my own personal business in real estate or in any other business that I'm involved in. These types of issues, ethical violations, that's something that I could deal with on any given day. Technological malfunctions. My real estate business, we operate heavily with things like DocuSign, where people sign contracts digitally over the internet using their email or fingertip signatures and things like that. When those things go down, knowing ahead of time that could happen, that the BSCOM course has helped me, kind of realize like, okay, it's not the end of the world. What's another option? What can I do to fix this particular problem and still be able to communicate effectively? There's always fax. There's always sending via email to where they don't DocuSign or sign online. They have to print out and then send back. So there's a lot of different ways that this class has helped me in moving forward with my professional life and even my personal life. I have 4 children and a wife, and we have to communicate effectively. We've recently downsized our home, and so it's a little bit tighter living space. And so being able to communicate effectively with them in my personal life, now that tensions are a little bit higher because we're a little bit closer together. But the right way of communicating and getting messages across to where everybody knows and understands this is how we operate. And I really, I really have to credit the BSCOM course as a whole with a lot of the way that my communication has gone, in the past year and a half. And it's been very challenging at times, but it's also been very helpful in a lot of different areas aside from just professional. So anyway, that is my presentation for this final assignment. Again, I'm going to try and keep it under or around 12 minutes, just so there's no issues with uploading to YouTube. But this is the final assignment, and I am very grateful to have learned everything that I've learned in the BSCOM course, and I'm looking forward to moving on to my master's program August 29th. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us a great 5 weeks and a very informative 5 weeks. It is very much appreciated. Thank you.